I'm Scott Forsythe. I'm 17 years old, and again, founder of DyslexiaKids.net, a support organization for people with dyslexia. I actually have dyslexia and dysgraphia, and today I can appreciate a lot of the gifts and talents that come with dyslexia. You've probably heard of some of them. You've heard that people with dyslexia tend to be more creative or better 3D thinkers. But I didn't start out that way. For one thing, school was really difficult, especially when I was younger. My journey with dyslexia began with me writing my name like this. Believe it or not, at one point that looked to me like my name. O-T-T-C-S. But now, it's very different. I've overcome a lot of the challenges that come with dyslexia, things like difficulty with reading, and tests don't seem so impossible because it's a lot easier for me to remember facts and whatnot. In December, I actually scored in the top 2% in the nation on the ACT test. The journey that began with me spelling my name, O-T-T-C-S, to scoring that high on the ACT has not been easy. There have been tons of bumps and challenges along the way. It was obvious from very early on that I was different from the other kids in my class. Now, some of these things might sound familiar to some of you. I couldn't learn to tie my shoes. I couldn't distinguish left from right. I couldn't write so that I can even read what I wrote, as we saw at the beginning. And I couldn't even read the letters when my classmates were already able to tell them apart and everything. My parents suspected that I had dyslexia and dysgraphia, and that was confirmed by the doctors. We tried public and private schools, but neither one was a positive experience for me. I think the teachers try their best, but they didn't have the knowledge or the resources to help. My classmates noticed I was different. I spent a lot of time on my own, away from the other kids. I was beat up both physically by classmates and emotionally by teachers. One teacher even asked my parents to remove me from her class permanently because my dyslexia was disruptive. I went through a lot of testing and tutoring, but that actually made things worse. It hurt my self-confidence and even caused me to develop a stutter. It was time to think creatively. Allow me to introduce you to my creative team, my parents. I have really excellent parents, but they're from two very, very different backgrounds. My mom loved school. She was a top student all the way through law school, teacher's dream student. Dad had a very different experience in school. He'd tried just as hard, but Dad has dyslexia. It was not properly diagnosed until high school, and he certainly was not given the proper accommodations. Instead, he was separated from other students and placed in a trailer in the school parking lot, along with students who had everything from mild learning differences to severe mental illness, none of it diagnosed properly. School was so stressful for him that he actually became physically sick if he had to participate in a spelling bee. He also failed the 3rd grade and had to attend summer school. In spite of all that, he went on to become a talented and successful engineer who gets to design weather satellites and work with NASA. Speaking of NASA, more than half of NASA employees have dyslexia. They are specifically chosen to work at NASA because of their superior problem-solving abilities and spatial awareness skills, among other qualities. As we saw, my parents are different in a lot of ways, especially in their academic background. But one thing that they have in common is how driven and determined they are. They were driven to help me, and they encouraged me to work hard and to never give up. They also made sure that I would never see myself as a victim, as somebody who's unfortunate for having dyslexia. Dyslexia isn't something negative. Really, the way I think of it is a learning advantage that schools just can't handle yet. Life is full of challenges that might seem impossible to overcome, but it is our job to meet those challenges head on. We started by finding out as much as we could about dyslexia after I'd been diagnosed. It's a good thing my mom likes to research because there was a lot of research to do. Since Dad works with so many brilliant people with dyslexia, he started his research by talking to them. My parents discovered that there is no one-size-fits-all, works for everybody tool, strategy, or teaching method that applies to everyone with dyslexia. For those of us who have dyslexia, I don't think that's very surprising. We know that the one-size-fits-all approach used by most schools doesn't tend to work for us or for other students outside of the middle of the learning spectrum. Differences in how each person learns are vital when you're trying to find a learning strategy that will work for you. People with dyslexia are as unique as snowflakes. Each one has different symptoms, levels of severity, and different learning styles, but also different experiences, backgrounds, and interests. Despite the uniqueness of each person with dyslexia, though, there are three things that Dad found everyone he talked to had overcome dyslexia had in common. First, none of them saw themselves as being victims or as being disabled. All of them were very positive about their dyslexia. Second, they were all self-aware. They knew how their unique brains and their unique learning styles worked. Third, each of them had a light bulb moment of clarity, where suddenly they could begin to understand the letters and words on our pages. That's not to say that they were able to read instantly upon having that light bulb moment, but there was a distinct instant where they had sort of a revelation, which, combined with other breakthroughs and hard work, led to the mastery of reading. These people weren't cured of dyslexia. Dyslexia can't be cured. It's a difference in how the brain operates. But they learned to compensate for the negative aspects of dyslexia, the challenges with reading, remembering lists, etc., to such a degree that they could function at or above grade level with no assistance. A lot of you probably already know that dyslexia is a hereditary trait. It is passed on from parents or grandparents to their children. And again, there is no cure for dyslexia. Because dyslexia is a difference in the way the brain operates, the way in which dyslexia must be overcome is unique to your individual brain. My mom started methodically going through the available tools and methods, trying to find something to trigger my light bulb moment. We started with a lot of the tools that are typically recommended for students with dyslexia, but none of them were making a ton of progress. We also found that there's combinations of smaller changes that can help a lot, especially for me. For instance, we found that if you change the white background that most paper uses to be tinted a different color, that can actually help a lot. I can read it much better on slightly yellow or green paper than I can on stark white. If you change the font, it's an even bigger impact. With a serif font, like this one here, the letters seem to blur together and merge. Whereas with a clean font, it's much easier to distinguish between the letters. Finally, we have lighting. The lighting in a room actually affected my ability to read, especially when I was younger. It was much easier for me to read under incandescent lights than it was fluorescent, and fluorescent lights actually gave me a headache. Now, something I'd like to point out real quick. I've mentioned the font and background changes. Now, changing the font and background helped, but another thing that helped was the Bob book series. That was partly because of their layout and word structure, but mostly because they were very encouraging. I have one here, actually. As you can see, they're very thin, very small, not a lot of words, but anytime I finished one, I felt as though I had completed an entire book, which was really encouraging. Yet another encouraging thing, my mom let me pick out any books I wanted from the library. I normally chose comic books because they were easier to read and because the pictures made it easier to distinguish what was happening. Mom's view is that reading does not have to be from a textbook, and that it is far more important for me to stay motivated to read and interested in reading, especially given how difficult it is for me. Anything I wanted to read, she supported that and turned it into an opportunity to learn. Another encouraging person, well, I say person, was my pet guinea pig, Lucy. When you're considering ways to stay motivated to read, not a lot of people think of their pets. But for me, it was a huge help. I could read out loud to Lucy, and no matter how many mistakes or stumbles I made, she would never criticize or correct me. It was very nice. Now, all that had a cumulative effect and did help me learn to read somewhat. But I was still not catching up to my peers, not by a long shot. And my mom still had to read a lot of my books to me. At the time, as I mentioned, I was hooked on comic books, particularly the Transformers comic books. My mom would read them out loud to me, and it was a very special time of day. Little did I know, that was about to come to an abrupt, painful end. My team of parents, teachers, and tutors had tried everything they could think of, and nothing had made a huge impact. They couldn't see things or process things the way I could, and I couldn't explain what I was seeing or processing in a way that made sense to them. Would I ever learn to read? Would I ever catch up to grade level? One day, I received a brand new Transformers comic book, and I asked my mom to read it to me. She told me that I would have to read those books by myself from now on. At the time, I was devastated. I didn't know it, but Mom was too. She didn't want to hurt my feelings, but she knew that she had to motivate me because I was the only person left who could actually unlock the secrets to my reading well. It was painful, but it worked. It took me days to read that small, simple comic book, but I managed it. And when I did, I read through it over and over and over again. Each time I was finding a new and better way to decode the letters and words. That led to my light bulb moment. I had finally started on the path to reading at grade level. I'd found a strategy that worked for me. Just a side note, my way of reading words involves seeing the entire word as a shape instead of as a collection of letters, and then processing those shapes differently than most people. Anyways, like I said, that was the first step to reading fluently at grade level. But after that, I had to keep working hard and keep practicing and developing my reading abilities, which I did. I can now read at about 100 pages per hour. I've been reading and spelling at the level of a college graduate since I was 13 years old. Again, I took the ACT recently and scored in the 98th percentile, that means the top 2% in the nation, even in the English section. And I didn't need or use any of the available accommodations. I'm also on the Teen Advisory Board for the Allen County Public Library and the American Library Association. Part of my job with them involves reading more than 100 books per year and before they're published, and giving early feedback to the publishers, authors, and illustrators. I'm also an Eagle Scout with the Boy Scouts of America. Now, to achieve that rank, I don't know if any of you know this, you have to do a project that helps the community. For example, some people help to restore a park. What I did was I compiled a list of books that are easy to read for children with dyslexia. Ones that have those exact formatting features I mentioned earlier, a tinted background and a clean and easy to read font. I put that list together, and the Allen County Public Library, the library in my hometown, shared it for use with all libraries across the nation. I also wrote my own interactive ebook about dyslexia for kids with dyslexia. I also get to design levels for Team Fortress 2, Portal, and Skyrim, as well as some other video games. I've learned to read and write fluently, but I still use a computer for a lot of my coursework. and I make use of several helpful pieces of assistive technology. And I'd like to share a few of them with you. First is a Smart Pen. This is definitely the one I use the most. The Smart Pen is a really helpful piece of assistive technology, especially for someone with dyslexia and dysgraphia. How it works is it's a special pen with a camera at the tip, a recorder, and sometimes Wi-Fi or digital storage. You can write notes, try and transcribe what the teacher is saying, or you can make a diagram or even a symbol or doodle. And what it will do is, as you make that shape, it will record where it is on the paper and what the teacher is saying when you write that. So if you fall behind what the teacher is saying when you're taking notes, or if you forget why you made a particular diagram, all you have to do is tap on that shape or diagram, and it will play back exactly what the teacher was saying at the time. Like I said, very helpful. Next is improving the formatting of documents. It still does help me somewhat to have better, cleaner fonts and sometimes a colored background. Now to do that in programs like Microsoft Word is really easy. What I do is I insert a rectangle, just a shape, and then I set it to whatever color I want the background to be. Then all I do is right-click the rectangle and select Behind Text. That sets it as a background. To improve the font is even easier. All you have to do is highlight the font and then select whatever font you want to use from the drop-down menu at the top of the screen. Now, if you can't find any fonts that you particularly like, you can also download several fonts from the internet. Some of them are specially designed just to be dyslexic friendly. Finally, there are studying apps. There's a surprising number of applications designed specifically to help you learn. Some of them are like iBooks that you can get iBooks that have interactive 3D models that you can turn around and see all the sides of an object. Some of them help you learn in more traditional ways, like flashcards, but just make it more on the go and you can change the fonts and whatnot. There are also apps like ModMath that help you with a particular subject. ModMath I bring up because it was helpful for me learning to line up the numbers in long division, which was difficult for me before. There are way too many assistive technologies for me to possibly cover all of them here. So you can find my pages on any of these websites or on dyslexickids.net for a more complete list. When I was trying to overcome my own dyslexia, when I was still struggling to read, I looked for a group like the one you have here. A support group, basically, for kids with dyslexia. There were none. I found plenty for the parents and teachers of kids with dyslexia, but none for the kids who are actually struggling with the learning difference. I decided to start my own. And that's where the website comes in. Dyslexickids.net was what I initially started with. It's grown to include support group meetings, free tutoring, and having web pages on all those websites and a few others. On those websites, I post, again, assistive technology and other useful tools. But I also post news about dyslexia itself, new discoveries in dyslexia diagnosis or what dyslexia is. I post, again, technologies, talk about scientific breakthroughs in dyslexia, and I share success stories of famous people with dyslexia. I also started and hosted a symposium about dyslexia in Fort Wayne. Last year, the mayor of the city attended and gave a proclamation. Some people think that I am unlucky to have dyslexia, that I ended up with the wrong set of genes. And yes, dyslexia did make school challenging. Once in a while, it still does, I'll be honest. But for the most part, I think that I'm very lucky to have dyslexia. My world is so much more colorful than it would be without dyslexia. Many of the skills and talents that come with dyslexia automatically are ones that are difficult or impossible to learn. For example, creativity, 3D thinking, and the ability to see the whole picture are things that cannot be taught, and there's no assistive technology to make up for the lack of them. I think that with the right encouragement, opportunities, and support, anybody can accomplish what I did. The road to success is often pictured like this: sunny, easy, no obstructions. The real road to success is anything but. There will be a lot of twists and turns, lots of obstacles to overcome, and sometimes it will feel like you're going uphill because it's so difficult. Not only that, but the road will constantly be under construction. A lot of the time, you'll have to make changes, go through new experiences, and learn new things. Each person's path to success will be different. Some of us might get to hold different destinations, but each of those destinations is great. I am really excited about your future, and I hope you are too. Each of you, again, will discover your own unique road to success, one perfectly designed for you. So never give up, keep working hard, try different things, believe in yourself, and build that road. You can do it. Thank you so much for listening.